with you guys. As always, excited for our guest today. It's Rich Gannon. Rich is a pretty impressive story. Was a guy who was sort of overlooked in a lot of ways throughout his football career. He was a guy who, once he got to the NFL, was told he couldn't play quarterback and said, you know what? I'm playing quarterback. And in fact, he ended up getting traded from the team that drafted him. And it took him a long time to establish himself as a starter. And then eventually, a guy was 37 years old when he becomes the MVP of the NFL. So it's a pretty awesome story, which fits in line with what we do here on the Rob Ellis Show. And it's really about perseverance. It's about the journey that got you to where you are today, because it's not always easy. On the outside looking in, it looks like everybody's life is easy and everybody's got it all figured out. And they just went from A to B to C to D to Z, right? And everything worked out perfectly. It's not the case. It's about the struggle, right? It's about how you kind of stick to it, how much you're willing to pay the price, how much you're willing to stick around a lot of times and not bail, and when to follow your gut. That's the other part of this thing. It's knowing when to jump, right? And when to take that move that's a little bit risky that may burn you. But if you don't try it, I think you'll be regretful. And I know in the case with my career, there have been a lot of curveballs, a lot of forks in the road, and a lot of situations where, I felt like kind of saying, maybe it's time to hang this thing up, but stuck with it. And I'm glad that I did. And that's really what I'm trying to get across, and using sports in a lot of ways as the vehicle as to what we talk about here, each and every week. And it's we've had a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different people here, between Brian Baldinger and Yuki Washington and James Palmer, among others, Howard Eskin, a lot of different people who have done many different things to get to where they are today. But, I always find the interesting thing that when you talk to folks about their career paths, one of the things they'll tell you is, look, I'm glad I did it, and it didn't always work out for me, but at least I tried, and I could live with myself if I took a shot, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for anybody. If you're willing to take a chance, you might fail, and in the end, it might not work out for you, but at least you say to yourself, I tried. Like, I did everything I could. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And that's part of life too. There are going to be times where you did everything you could possibly do. You put yourself in a position to succeed, and it didn't work out through whatever circumstance. And oftentimes it's not our fault, but at least you tried and you scratched the itch. That's why I have a lot of kids who are maybe in high school or college who want to get into the the sports media business. And my answer is always, and I said this to them when I taught at Temple, my answer is always, look, if you have a passion for this and you love this, take your shot, because you will regret not trying. You don't want to be 45, 50, 60 years old, in a job that may be, paying you well, but it's not as gratifying, and saying to yourself, what if? You don't want to do the what if thing. But what I also do try and do is keep your eyes as open as possible, because things are not easy, by any stretch. And you got to know the realities of what, how things are this day and age, and the lack of security and the chances that, hey, it may not work out, but have a backup plan or try and do this. I think the other great thing about this day and age, without question, is that there are opportunities and platforms for you that are there that maybe weren't there, 30 years ago. And that's a great thing, not only for young kids starting out, but I think also for anybody. You want to feel a need to have your voice heard. That's the way to go. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to Rich Gannon. Rich is a guy who grew up in the Philly area and really earned things the hard way in his career. Several different teams. And like I said, he kind of overlooked even in high school when the guy was a great player at St. Joe's Prep, ended up at Delaware and just willed his way to a lot of things. And then very successful post-playing career as a broadcaster and analyst, and a guy who, I'll tell you, I do a show during the football season with Rich, and he is as informed of an analyst as anybody I've ever worked with. I've worked with a lot of guys who kind of can fake their way through it because they played the game and sort of rest on that. That's not Rich. When it comes to each and every team, he is incredibly informed. I don't know how he does it, man, but he watches virtually every single game that's played. And by Monday morning or Monday afternoon, he's ready to talk about them. So very excited to talk to Rich and hang out with Rich. And Rich is ready to go right now. So without further ado, let's bring on the man himself, former NFL most valuable player, St. Joe's Prep Zone, Northeast Philly, University of Delaware Blue Hen. There he is, Rich Gannon. Rich, how are you, my friend?
Rob, it is so good to see you, buddy. It's been too long. As you said, we worked together during the season, and I am so excited to get started again. Football is right around the corner. Teams reporting to training camp, and we go back to work. And so I'm looking forward to doing some training camp tours and August being here and just the start of football all over again. It's a special time of the year, especially for former players. Our time clock, we're used to being back in training camp and two-a-days and things like that. So I'm excited. I can smell it. I can smell football in the air.
Yeah, but Rich, I wasn't blowing smoke, and I don't know if you heard what I said, but you can tell people who are true fans of the sport, right? Versus, I think you probably played with guys who were great athletes and played and were kind of like, I'm out, man. I couldn't tell you one thing that's happening today. You are up on everything, which shows not only are you a professional that you're prepared, but you are a fan of the sport, man. Like it comes through when you and I talk about what we discuss.
You're right, Rob. The best players that I've played with love football. I talk to coaches and general managers all the time about, the selection process, right? The drafting players, recruiting players. And they say, I want players on our team that love football, that love everything about it, that love studying, that love working out, that love being, out on the practice field, love practice. Some players don't like to practice. The greatest players love to practice and get better at their craft. And I grew up that way. I started playing at a very young age and I just loved watching it on television, loved going to games. And so it's just in my DNA. I love everything about it. I love the whole process. And, that helped, I think, me in my journey as a football player, the fact that I just love going to, work at it and getting better each and every day.
Yeah, Rich, you probably had plenty of opportunities where you could have hung it up, but love of the game, I think, continued, and your competitiveness continued to motivate you. Well, let's start at the beginning here. Northeast Philly kid, and you still wear your Philly, badge with pride. I know that because you and I always talk about the Catholic League and everything else. So you grew up in a very sports crazed environment, not only with your family, but your buddies around the neighborhood. So tell me a little bit about the upbringing there.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was one of six. I had four older brothers that all played, sports. And so they would drag me along. They'd take me across the street. We had a park across the street from our house. And so, we were always throwing the ball around of some sorts. And even the kids in the neighborhood, everybody, kind of played sports. It was hockey and football and baseball and basketball. We just went from one season to the next. And so I was blessed to kind of be in that environment. I remember going to my mom when I was in first grade and right before football tryouts. And I said, Mom, I want to play football. And she said, you're too young to play football. Not this year, maybe next year. So I was really disappointed that I didn't get a chance to play in first grade. But I started playing in second grade at the Fox Chase Recreation Center. And there was a 65-pound team. So you had to weigh under 65 pounds. And so I met that weight requirement, and I began my football career as a second grader.
How did you know, not to, in a bragging way, but did you have an idea at a young age, like I could play a little bit here, like this could be something, or was it something that took a little while for you to kind of develop?
Well, I love the competition, and I wasn't short on confidence, and I just, I grew up playing with older people and older brothers and kids in the neighborhood, so I wasn't intimidated by that. And so certainly when I got around kids my own age, I felt really comfortable. So I just remember trying out for this team, and when I was in second grade, and I felt like I'm one of the better players, even though I hadn't played it down a football yet. So that helped a little bit. I think playing with older kids and older brothers and brothers who took an interest in me, right? My older brothers would play catch with me and throw the ball with me, and so I certainly benefited from that. And I see that a lot. I see when I work with young kids, you ask questions, you get to know the situation, the family situation, and you can see the young kids that grew up in a family with competitive older brothers have a tendency to be pretty good athletes.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to high school, because you go to St. Joe's Prep, which certainly a big time school. I don't know that it was the factory that it's become now, Rich. I mean, they are just cracking out big time college and pro players nonstop. But it was, certainly well respected, no doubt, when you went there. But what was the decision process to go there, and how long did it take before you felt like, okay, I belong here also?
So yeah, I would have the local Catholic high school would have been Cardinal Doherty, which was a kind of a football powerhouse in the Northern Division. And I had an older brother, John, who was an all-city player. They won a city championship with the Prep in 1977. I followed him to the Prep.
Okay.
And I had to play freshman football. We played 6 games, and then my sophomore year, I didn't get a chance to really play. And then even my junior year, like I didn't start my junior year. It wasn't until maybe a couple of games into my junior year where they made a quarterback change. I got a chance to finish out that year. So it was always a struggle for me, to find the field. And so I got a chance to play my junior year, had some success. And then my senior year, we had a pretty good team, but not like the Prep nowadays, where they just kind of run through, teams in the Philadelphia area and have to jump on a plane to go play somebody that's more competitive.
It is crazy. But it's interesting, though. I'm sure at the time it's very hard when you're 16, 17 years old, but all those experiences along the way helped you. I'm sure later you could fall back on some of these things when you maybe weren't getting your chance, right away in the NFL. But nonetheless, not only, by the way, Rich, really good quarterback, you were a phenomenal punter as well in high school, and you punted at Delaware also, right?
Yeah, I did. So I punted a little bit at the Prep. I actually kicked a little bit. And so I could do different things. I didn't play defense. And in hindsight, Rob, that hurt me when I was getting recruited, because, a lot of teams that were, colleges that were giving out scholarships, especially at the quarterback position, they wanted to make sure, like, for some reason, if this kid comes and doesn't win that starting job, there's only one quarterback.
Right. We
have a chance to play him at defensive back or at safety or somewhere else. So the fact that I didn't play defense in high school probably didn't help me. But, I just think I tell this to young players all the time, or young people, part of the process, and one of the great things about playing sports is you have to overcome adversity. There are going to be setbacks. You're not going to make the team. Michael Jordan didn't make his basketball team, I think, his sophomore year.
Yep.
There's going to be injuries. There's going to be bad losses. There's going to be a bad performance. You have to pick yourself up off the mat. You have to be able to come back. You have to be able to, look yourself in the mirror and accept the responsibility when things don't go well. And I think that's a great thing about sports, any sport, is that we find out a lot about ourselves, and we have to overcome adversity. We have to have some mental and physical toughness. These are a lot of the qualities and characteristics, Rob, that you and I talk about each week when we're evaluating the quarterback position. You asked me, what do I like about this player? And I said, that position, at the quarterback position, I first and foremost, I look for physical and mental toughness. I want to see a guy who can sit in the pocket and take a punch. I want to see a guy who's going to sit in the pocket and not flinch when the pass rush is coming. I want to see a guy that can, get sacked 5 or 6 times in a game and still find a way to get his team to the finish line. That's why I think that's so important. And I think, part of anybody's journey, regardless of what sport, really regardless of what career, if you can't handle and deal with adversity, it's going to be tough.
It's interesting you bring that up, Rich, because I talk to scouts a lot, and they'll say one of the things they make it a point to do is, if the game's not particularly close, watch the effort that you get from certain players. If they're getting beat badly, are they still trying? Whatever the case may be. And oftentimes that'll separate people. They won't recruit them, or they won't look at them at the pro level if they're dogging it, if their team's down 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. And you're right about that, man. That is something that they always bring up with me.
That's a great point. And that's, coaches will look at that. You just don't, a lot of players, when they want to get recruited to colleges, they send them their highlight reels, right? And coaches will look at that. They get interest, and then they'll start looking and researching more, right? So, if you look at 3 or 4 games and the team won 35-7, 42-0, okay, there's probably some good things to watch on tape. is there a game out there where it didn't go so well? I want to see that game, as you said. What type of competitor is he when things aren't going well? Is he giving 100% effort? Is he making plays late in games, or did he just mail it in? I think that tells you a lot about a person's character and his toughness, and that's why it's really important to when you do the full evaluation on a player.
Well, all right. So you had a really good, as you mentioned, you step in there junior year, things start rolling at prep. Senior year, really good year. What were the choices? What made you decide Delaware, and what were the other options for you? What were you looking at? And in any way, shape, or form, were you bummed that it wasn't D1?
Yeah. So what was interesting is the recruiting process is a lot different now than it was back then. But, back then you'd start getting letters in the mail. And in my junior year, I got quite a few letters. I heard from, North Carolina and Penn State and West Virginia and Memphis and all these different schools. I heard from schools in the East. I heard from Army and Navy. And so I really felt like, I was going to get, an offer to go to the Division I program. And my senior year, I had a really good year. I was, I was the Catholic League MVP. I was all Catholic, all city, all those things. So I really felt like I'd have a lot of opportunities. And Penn State passed me by. They, I think they came in and visited me at the prep, and I was 6'2", 195 pounds. Right. Back then, Penn State, if you weren't like 6'4", 225, they weren't even looking at you.
You're like a linebacker. You had that. It's the only way to get
I was like, I don't think I fit their criteria for what they were looking for. I did hear from Bruce Arians had just taken the job at Temple. He had come from Alabama. He was on Bruce Arians' staff. Yeah. His first visit was to my house on Central Avenue in Northeast Philadelphia. He offered me a full scholarship to come to Temple. But keep in mind, Rob, I took the subway every day to school at St. Joe's Prep. And one of the stops on the Broad Street line was Temple University before I got to Girard and get off and walk 3 blocks to the prep. I wasn't going to go to Temple University. I wanted to leave the city. I wanted to go somewhere different. And, my brother had played at Delaware, had great success, was a 3-year starter, had been down to a lot of Delaware games. Delaware had a very successful
Tubby Raymond, big time coach.
National championships, had quarterbacks that went to the NFL, Jeff Comlow, Scott Bruner. And so I was intrigued by that. And so what's interesting is Delaware didn't recruit me that hard. It wasn't until Gamp Pellegrini, my head coach, Jack Brank, a couple phone calls were made saying, hey, you should look at this kid from the prep. And so I went down there. I didn't even have an official visit to Delaware. I drove down to Delaware by myself, met with the coaching staff. And I think they were reluctant to offer me a scholarship only because they had a pretty loaded roster at quarterback. They spent a couple of scholarships the year before on a quarterback, a couple of scholarships the year before that on a quarterback. So they had 5 or 6 quarterbacks on scholarship. So they weren't really looking to use a scholarship on that class, the class of 83. So at the very last minute, I heard from Maryland. Something must have happened. They must have lost a kid. Okay. I'd already committed to Delaware, and I thought it was a great decision. Unfortunately, again, at the prep, I wasn't eligible to play my freshman year. At Delaware back then, Rob, you had to play freshman football.
Oh, so you couldn't play varsity.
No, I lost a full year. It was kind of Delaware had that kind of Ivy League mentality. It's like, you know what? We're going to bring the freshmen in late. We're going to get them situated with school first, let them get to their classes and let them get up on campus. And then we'll have them report like in the first week in September. So
I never knew that. Oh,
so I played my freshman year. I think we played 6 games. And so that was kind of a waste, right?
Yeah.
And then I only played 3 years at Delaware. But I got a chance to start my sophomore year. I was a 3-year starter. We played we played Temple, we played Navy, we played Holy Cross, we played some good programs, Boston University, and so I got some good experience.
So you roll out of there, Rich. You had 21 school records at the time you left. Among them, total offense, passing yards. I mean, Yankee Conference Player of the Year. You put up some serious numbers. So at what point senior year, or what range did you think you would go? Are you hearing from a lot of teams? Like, how did it work your senior year in terms of where you thought you would go versus where you went?
Yeah, the first step in the process was getting invited to the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis, and that happened. So I was like, well, that's a good sign.
Right.
And I went there, and I had a pretty good couple of days and worked out well and had some good numbers and threw the ball pretty well. So, and then what happened was teams started coming to Delaware for individual workouts. So I probably had, I'd say 12 or 15 teams that came in. So I felt pretty good about that. The 49ers came in, and a lot of teams that I would be interested in going to.
Sure.
And as it turned out, ironically enough, one team that didn't come in and work me out, one team that didn't need a quarterback, was the team that took me to New England Patriots, and that was heartbreaking. When you get drafted, I was drafted in the 4th round. I was the 96th player selected in the 1987 draft, and I got a phone call from their general manager, Dick Steinberg, and their head coach, Raymond Berry, who's a Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Right.
And I'll never forget Raymond Berry saying to me on the phone, "Rich, congratulations. You're a New England Patriot. We're really excited for you. We just want to find the best position for you." And I thought, well, did he just say that?
That's what he hit you with right out of the chute?
That's exactly what he said. He said, "We just want to find the best position for you." And I almost dropped the phone. I was so disappointed. And I hung up the phone. I called my mom and dad. I was just devastated. And I said, I can't believe what just happened.
Oh, my God.
And so, my dad was an attorney. I took the LSATs. I was a political science major at Delaware. And so I thought, I'm going to go to law school.
Wow. That was your thought.
I had been accepted to law school. I thought to myself, I'm just going to go to law school. Rob, I was smart enough to know that if I went to an NFL training camp and tried to make a position change, having never done it, could you imagine, all of a sudden, you're wearing these quarterback shoulder pads, and all of a sudden you get to an NFL training camp, they give you these big pads, right?
Yeah.
And they give you
go tackle that guy.
Yeah. Face mask and go tackle that guy. Or return kicks or do something like I've never, and not only that, but compete against players
who had done it their whole lives.
I thought to myself, there's zero chance.
All right, hold that thought, Rich. This is fascinating. All right, let me get a quickie in here. That we'll be right back because I want to pick it up from there because you did something that frankly took a lot of balls, I think. So let's do that when we come back. That's Rich Gannon. You were watching the Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. We'll step away quickly, get back to this, pick it right up where Rich was. We'll be right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we're back. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio with my guy, Rich Gannon. All right, Rich, so when we just left, it should have been the best day of your life as a young man. You're just joyous. In 1987, you get drafted by the Patriots in the 4th round. By the way, did you think 4th round or were you thinking maybe a little bit earlier? We'll get to the Patriots.
I was hoping earlier, Rob. Yeah. It's probably where I should have been selected. Okay. I think that somewhere in that 3rd or 4th round. And so it worked out okay.
All right. So let's go there then. So you Dick Steinberg says that to you on the phone and you're thinking to yourself, do I even want to go through with this at this point? I'm like you said, you had options, be a lawyer, etc. But you do decide to go to camp, right? And the options on the table were essentially running back, receiver, or D-back, right? And they also, I think, wanted you to return punts because you were, look, in some ways it's a compliment, right? Because you were an unbelievable athlete and you could run and do a lot of different things. You weren't some, statue in the pocket, but still, you played quarterback your whole life, man.
Yeah. So actually, Rob, I got traded 6 days later.
Oh.
So what happened was this is a very interesting story. And actually the Philadelphia Eagles are a part of the story. So I was really disappointed. I remember driving up to Philadelphia to see my mom and dad talk about it a little bit. I talked to Tubby Raymond, our head coach. He actually reached out to a guy named Peter Johnson, who was an agent with the International Management Group. He was a Delaware grad, so he came and he tried to help me a little bit. But the guy that really helped me was a Philadelphia Eagle. So Leo Carlin was a ticket manager, the longtime ticket manager for the Philadelphia
Legend.
Eagles.
He's a legend.
A legend.
Yes.
And his kids all went to the prep. And
Right.
I played with them. They were teammates, man. Leo and Clayton's my best friend. And so I called Mr. Carlin. And as luck would have it, Leo Carlin was very good friends with Bucko Kilroy, who was a personnel executive with the New England Patriots.
Oh, wow.
So Leo picks up the phone. He calls his buddy Bucko Kilroy, who they worked together with the Eagles. And he said, hey, you got to do something here. This is like my second son. I used to stay at the Carlin's Beach House in Seattle City, New Jersey.
Right.
I spent a lot of time at their house over there in Ballackinwood. I mean, we kind of grew up together during those high school years. And so Mr. Carlin was like a, second dad to me.
Right.
So he calls Bucko Kilroy. Sure enough, Bucko Kilroy has a conversation with Dick Steinberg and Raymond Berry and says, hey, this kid isn't fooling around. Like he's a quarterback. He wants to play quarterback. He's going to go to law school. We're going to lose a draft pick here.
Oh.
And so 6 days later, I get a phone call from the Minnesota Vikings. They said, get on a plane. You're a Minnesota Viking. And what happened was the Vikings, I think, were picking 99th or picking 2 picks later. And they were getting ready to pull the trigger and take me in the draft. So they really wanted me, the Vikings.
Oh, okay.
And so when they found out that, there was the Patriots were going to move the pick, they jumped right in there. And as it turned out, I went to Minnesota. So I spent my first mini camp, my first training camp, and my first 6 years with the Vikings.
I didn't know it was that quick. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you end up well, first of all, that was fate anyway. You met your wife,
right?
No matter what else came out of it. Right. So there you go. You meet your wife, but it's all good beyond that. But Rich, same common thread here, right? You go there. You're backing up Wade Wilson, right? You got a little bit of time, right? But you're backing up Wade Wilson essentially. And then, third stringer, didn't play much in 89 either. It takes a while. How long before you feel like, all right, I'm getting a fair shot here in Minnesota, or did it ever feel that way?
It never really felt that way, but I did get a chance to play quite a bit towards the end of my run in Minnesota. It was the common theme, right? Remember, always having to overcome adversity, going to the prep, not starting, going to Delaware, having to play freshman football. And then, there was challenges along the way at Delaware. Mm-hmm. And getting drafted by a team that didn't want me to play quarterback, then going to a team that had, 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks and, veteran quarterbacks and Tommy Kramer and Wade Wilson. So I didn't really get a chance to play much at all my rookie year, even my second year. And, there were some frustrating times, the questions whether I'm going to get a chance to ever show this coaching staff that I can do it. And so I played a little bit in 90 and 91. And then in 92, they made a coaching change. Denny Green came in, took over for Jerry Burns. Mm-hmm. I held out of training camp. I missed a lot of training camp. I was without a contract. And I think that rubbed Denny Green the wrong way. Mm-hmm. I came in and went up starting that year. We were 8-3. I think we had a 2-game lead in the old NFC Central.
Right.
And he sat me down. He benched me, and never told me why, never even told me the news. He had the offensive coordinator tell me I wasn't going to start this week. And said that, you're banged up. We're going to give you a chance to heal up a little bit, which was not the case. Mm-hmm. So they sat me down for 2 weeks and then put me back in against the world champion 49ers. And we lost a close game, and then they sat me down again. And that was really it. I was at that point, I knew I'd never be back in Minnesota. Got traded again, traded during training camp the following year to the Washington Redskins. So, it was, like I said, even my NFL career was a challenge,
Yeah.
Never and I think the thing that was so frustrating, Rob, about those 6 years in Minnesota, I never felt like any of the head coaches that I played for, even the coordinators, really truly believed in me. Not say, hey, you're our guy. We're gonna ride with you, and that's important. It's important to know that that the team, coaching staff, the owner and the general manager, they believe in you. And I never really felt like that in Minnesota.
So how would you? Is there any point, Rich, and even with the Washington years, which were kind of the same thing, was there ever a thought of, you know what, I'm kind of done. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready maybe to practice law or just get into something else in life? Did that ever really get close, or did you always still have the love, still have the competitive fire?
No, I mean, there was another setback. So I get traded to Washington after during training camp in '93. I literally report, I think, in September, late August, and they had made a coaching change. Like Joe Gibbs retired, Richie Pettibone took over. The team, when I got there, I was stunned. Like this was a team that won the Super Bowl 2 years earlier. Was a really good team.
Right.
You had a lot of great players. You had Art Monk and Mark
Gary
Rick
Clark and that crew. Yeah, they were loaded.
There was a lot of great. Yet that some of the Hogs were still there, like Bostic and
Darryl Green on the other side. Yeah,
Darryl Green playing. I mean, there was just a lot of really good players, and so, but they were aging players. And I just remember going out in the practice field. I'm like, man, this team isn't very fast. They're not explosive, and they're always hurt. And we got off to a slow start that year. And I just remember like the guys saying, "Oh yeah, we're the Redskins. That's okay. We've been in this position before. We can peel off 6 straight wins, 7 straight wins, get back in the playoffs." I'm like, okay. And I never saw it. Like I never saw it on the practice field. I just never saw this team being very good. And as it turned out, we went 4-12. I think I started 4 games that year. The team just wasn't very good. And the whole year that I was there, I was having arm problems. I was shoulder problems. It was hard for me to go out in the field and warm up. It's just like something wasn't right. And so after that season, I went back and I had shoulder surgery. And I was supposed to have what they call a decompression, where the surgeon goes in as a scope. They shave down some of the AC joint. They clean up any like loose ends, and then you're back in the weight room and back throwing in a couple of weeks. Well, as it turned out, I had a tear in my rotator cuff. So they weren't able to do any surgery. They noticed it during the surgery. And then I had to go back in 2 weeks later and have rotator cuff surgery. So that was devastating because at the time I was a free agent. I knew I wasn't going back to the Redskins. They had a new coach in North Turner. And, they replaced all 3 quarterbacks from the year before. So I was trying to catch on with the team. Yeah. But I was walking around with my shoulder in a sling. And I couldn't throw. I couldn't work out. It was a 9-month rehab. And so I didn't have the surgery until the middle part of January. And so, I just wasn't going to be ready until, September or October. As it turned out, nobody signed me. I went in for a couple workouts with some teams once the season had started, but nobody was really serious. And so I missed the 94 season.
Wow.
So I was still a young player. Still felt like I had a big future in front of me. Newly married, had our first child, went from making, good money in Washington to no money. Like I went from like $1 million in 1993 to $0 in 94 and, having my first child. So an interesting story, Rob. So during that winter, I was like thinking to myself, like, what's this going to look like in the spring? And the Winnipeg Blue Bombers called me.
Oh, wow.
Often the Winnipeg Blue Bombers called me up and said, "Hey, I know you didn't play last year. We'd love to have you come play for us. We have a tryout camp in Dallas, Texas coming up." And I thought to myself, why would I ever do this? Like I'm an NFL player.
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, you haven't worked out for anybody. And you need to throw, you need to go out and compete. You need to be with somebody. So I said, why not use it as an opportunity just to go down there and compete.
Smart.
And around.
Yeah.
So I went down there. It was the craziest workout. There was probably, 150 players there.
Just guys off the street.
Guys off the street, guys wearing red baseball cleats, guys weren't bringing their gym bags, guys that played like junior college, guys that like, good high school players. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
I went down there. I don't know that a single one of those players was ever going to be, they probably took from 150 kids. They probably took, 5 kids that they brought in for workouts, and for, to come compete in training camp. But anyways, it turned out I went down there. It was really demoralizing to be truth be told. It was demoralizing. I went down there. I did it. I worked out. And then shortly after that, I get a call from 49ers and the Chiefs, and both of those teams wanted to bring me in for a workout. And as it turned out, I got an offer from both teams. At the time, the 49ers had Steve Young and a young quarterback named Elvis Grubach, who they really liked. And their head coach at the time was George Seifert. He said, if you come here, you're going to be the third quarterback. So I went to the Kansas City Chiefs. They had Steve Bono, who was Norristown kid.
Philly kid, yeah. Yep.
He played at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was going to be a first-time starter. And I thought to myself, going to Kansas City, I can at least compete for the backup job. And, and who knows what would happen. And as it turned out, it was the right decision.
Yeah, so you go there and it kind of stabilizes things, Rich. I think more than anything else, going there, and you spent some quality years there for sure. And then everything changes, man. You end up going to the Raiders after that in what, 99, and you're 33, 34. So you've been through it. You've been through a lot, shoulder surgery and ups and downs and all those kind of things. And was it just the perfect marriage? Was it just finally like, I'm in the right place and here we go? Or did it not happen that quickly? Was it not like kismet?
It really did, Rob. I mean, like you said, you go back over your career. I had a knee surgery my second year, an ACL repair, I had a rotator cuff repair. I was out of football a year. I go to Kansas City, as you said, to kind of restart my career. Those 4 years in Kansas City were absolutely critical. I got around some really good coaches. Marty Schottenheimer was outstanding. Really good offensive coordinator, Paul Hackett. Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, a coach that won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. He was my quarterback coach for 4 years. He was the best thing that could ever happen to me. He spent a lot of time really working on my game, developing my game, teaching me really how to prepare to play on a Sunday. And so those were really formative years for me in terms of getting me ready to kind of be a starter once again. And then when I went to the Raiders in 99, it was the first time that I got with a head coach in John Gruden that absolutely believed in me. Just basically said, look, we're going to do this together. We're either going to win together and have a lot of success, or we're going to fail together, but we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
And he basically handed me the keys to the car, and that's all I needed. I just needed one person to believe in me at that level. And it took a long time. As you said, I was 33, 34 years old. But after that experience, I went to 4 straight Pro Bowls. And, we won 3 straight AFC West titles. I was played in 2 AFC Championship games, played a Super Bowl, was an NFL MVP. I mean, it happened fast, but it took a while to get to the pinnacle of my performance. And but it helped that I had someone like John Gruden who believed in me.
Let's talk about 02 because you go off, Rich. You have 4,600 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, passer rating 97.2, 418 completions. I mean, it was clicking, man. I mean, and everything was kind of hitting. And obviously, it's disappointing the way the Super Bowl played out. But just talk about that year in general. I mean, that had to be the peak of everything for you.
Yeah, it was really a fun year. Going into it, there was a lot of uncertainties. We lost John Gruden. Al Davis traded away John Gruden to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that previous winter, and so we were shocked. And so Bill Callahan took over as our head coach. He had never been a head coach at any level. Yeah. And Mark Trestman took over as the play caller. And I had worked with Mark in Minnesota, and so we had a relationship. And Mark was really good. He was different from John in that he wasn't afraid to let go. Like John was very controlling. He wanted to control the game plan and be very involved, where Mark wanted to control it, but would give it to you. In other words, he'd let you call multiple plays at the huddle.
What works best for you? What are you seeing here?
That kind of a little bit more flexibility and freedom at the line of scrimmage. And so I ran with it, and we had a lot of success. And I was lucky, though, Rob. I played with some great players. I mean, I had Jerry Rice on one side, I had Tim Brown on the other side. Charlie Gardner, a former Eagle, was a great running back for us. We had Tyrone Wheatley. We had a big offensive line. We had some good players on defense, Rod Woodson and Trace Armstrong, John Perella, Charles Woodson. We just had a lot of really good players. And so we had success. But it's interesting that year, we start off 4-0. We lose 4 straight games.
Yeah, people forget that. Yeah.
We lose 4 nail biters.
Yep.
We go to Denver on a Monday night. We fall behind early, and then Rod Woodson picks off a Brian Greasy pass and takes it back 97 yards for a touchdown, and that just flipped the script for us. That was we went on to beat them badly in Denver on a Monday night, and then we go 7-1 down the stretch and win a division and finish in a position where we're 11-5 and we're playing as well as anybody at the end of the year.
I know people tend to simplify things, but was it a case that you felt like you should have changed a little bit more up for the Super Bowl, knowing Gruden's intimate knowledge? Do you think that was a mistake, or is that something that people?
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
That was the last Super Bowl with the 1 week turnaround. So we played the Tennessee Titans on a Sunday night. The next morning, we boarded a plane for San Diego for the Super Bowl. So we were an older team, an aging team, and the 1 week turnaround didn't help us. We also were a team that liked to indulge in a little extracurricular activity in terms of partying. We had some players that did a lot of that week, which was really foolish and quite frankly just so disappointing.
How do you not wait a week? You can do whatever you want after the Super Bowl.
We had our starting center, our all-pro center, the 2 nights before the game, go to Mexico and not come back.
Yeah,
he was so intoxicated and so disoriented. But so anyway, that was a problem. So with the 1 week turnaround, we really felt like the key for us was to run the football. If you look at the Buccaneers that year, and what teams really do during Super Bowl runs, Rob, is like if you get into the Super Bowl and you're facing a team, obviously you probably haven't played, right? You got an AFC team versus an NFC team. They go back and look at divisional matchups, because those teams in the division, like if you're going to play the Eagles in the Super Bowl, go back and look at the games against the Giants, the games against Washington, the games against what did those teams do against them? Because those teams know them best. They have knowledge of who they are, the personnel. We went back and we studied the Buccaneers, and the team that had the most success against them was the New Orleans Saints. They pounded the football at them, twice. So we really felt like that was going to be the key for us to run the ball. We had a big offensive line. We were a good running team. We were the #1 passing team in the NFL that year, but we really felt like running the football. So we come out the first series, we're trying to run it a couple of times. We get stuffed. We barely get back to the line of scrimmage. They had a great defensive line. They had some really good players up there.
All those guys,
Simeon Rice. They were really quick. They were beating us off the ball. They were the fresher team. And what we're doing is a lot of our run game was code words at the line of scrimmage. We'd be 92 Willie. It was a weak side run, or 96 Sam was a strong side stretch, or so we had all these terms, and every time I said something, whether it was Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, they said, here it comes. So they knew a lot of our code words, and John Gruden had really told them a lot of our code words and our signals and things like that. We had enough variation of it where we could change it up a little bit, but the first quarter was really a shocker to us. And it really felt like they were in our back pocket. They knew a lot of our stuff. So it really limited what we could do at the line of scrimmage some. And we fell behind, which is not good against that defense.
Right.
And we had some turnovers. And next thing you know, we're behind by a couple scores having to throw the football. And they just pinned their ears back, Simeon Rice. And it just kind of snowballed out of control. And we made a little run there in the third quarter, but we didn't play well. So when you don't play well in a game like that, when you turn the ball over, you get out coached, you get outplayed, the results aren't going to be good. And it's unfortunate because it's on a national stage. It's the Super Bowl. It's your one opportunity. I at that time, I was 37 years old, and you think to yourself, you may not get back. As it turned out, I didn't get back. But you hate to get to that point and not have it play out the way you expect,
or at least play at your best. If you lose and the other team just beats you,
we didn't play well defensively. Right. We didn't play well in the kicking game. Offensively, we were bad. It was our worst game of the season.
Right.
We had turnovers. We just didn't play well. And when you fall behind, you're pressing, right? You're trying to make a throw you shouldn't make. You're trying to fit one into a tight window, and we just didn't get any bounces. But you'd like to think, well, if we went back and played the game again, they were a really good team. Their offense wasn't great, but that was one of the, I look back on my career and think about the best defenses we played against. I think the 2000 Ravens defense with, Ray and all those guys, Ed Reed, that was a really good defense. And that 2002 Buccaneer defense, I mean, you look at, Rondé Barber, Hall of Famer. John Lynch, Hall of Famer. Warren Sapp, Hall of Famer. Derek Brooks, Hall of Famer. I mean, they had some really, really good players, and they made you earn it. They had a defensive coordinator in Monty Kiffin. Should be a Hall of Famer.
John Lynch on that team, and they were loaded
players.
Yeah. All right, Rich, if you got a second, I want to take a quickie, but I don't want to end on the down note, because then after retirement, man, you crush it as an analyst. So let's get a quickie in. I want to talk about post-football career, and I want to get your take on the Eagles and the NFC as well before we get you out of here. But we appreciate your time. Quick time out. Rich Gannon's going to hang around. You're watching the Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio Network. Right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we're back. We appreciate Rich Gannon giving us a couple minutes here. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio Network. And Rich and I have a blast working together during the football season, and I can't wait to get that kick back off. So, Rich, let's talk about it. After retirement, did you know immediately you wanted to get into, TV, analyst work, that kind of thing? Or did you consider a lot of different things? What was on the table?
Rob, I got really lucky. I got a call from my agent, and he said, CBS wants you to come in and do an audition to call NFL games. And I thought, and he said, you got to do this. This is a great opportunity. So I flew to New York. I did an audition with Gus Johnson, who was a play-by-play announcer, and had a lot of fun doing it. Wasn't any good at it, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And Sean McManus of CBS Sports offered me the opportunity to come in and call games. And so, what was interesting back then, they just threw you in a booth. Like there wasn't no broadcast boot camp. There wasn't a lot of, education that went on. There wasn't like a orientation process. They just threw you in the game, and you either had to figure out sink or swim.
Yeah.
And, I worked with a couple different announcers that year. I was fortunate. I did 4 games that year with Dick Enberg, which was really just such a treat. And he was such an awesome guy, and obviously a Hall of Famer and a real legend. And he was so nice to me because, he was working with a first-time broadcaster, and I was making mistakes like most of us do. And he just was so patient. Like he just was always willing to put his arm around me, help me out. And so I always cherished that time. But I went to work there for CBS 2005. I'm still working at CBS, and I love it. I called the games for 18 years, worked with a lot of great broadcasters. I worked with, as you said, Dick Enberg. I worked with Kevin Harlan, Greg Gumbel, Marv Albert, Ian Eagle, Bill McAtee. A great
some of the best in the business ever to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun, and I probably worked the most with Kevin Harlan, who's one of my best friends, and worked with some great producers and directors. And so a real privilege. I tell people all the time, to be associated with the NFL, whether you're a player, whether you're a broadcaster, whether you're a coach, it's an honor and a privilege. And I never took that for granted. You and I, Rob, are still blessed. I mean, we get a chance to talk about the NFL games. We get a chance to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want to sit on the beach in Ocean City, New Jersey, and talk about the Eagles or the Phillies or the Flyers or Sixers? It was a pretty good gig.
Yeah. It's funny, Rich. You probably get the same thing. I have people, you probably much more than I do, but I have people who come up to me and say, listen, man, I got to ask you about the Phillies, but I know you're probably tired of talking about it. I'm like, I'm talking about the Phillies. I'm not talking about brain surgery. I'm not talking about I enjoy. I love it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. So I never mind. Like people are like, you must hate it. I'm like, I don't hate it at all. You want to talk Eagles? Let's talk Eagles. I'm sure you get the same thing all the time.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Philly fans are special and unique, and they're they're well informed. This is a well-educated group. They know what their team's strengths and weaknesses are. So I always enjoy engaging with Philly fans wherever I can.
All right, so let me get you present day here, Rich, with the Eagles. Unbelievable year last year. We know came up a little short in the Super Bowl, but what is your expectation of this team this year?
Well, I suspect they'll be really good. They should be a favorite in the NFC East. I mean, I think they're talented from top to bottom. I mean, I think, they have one of the best offensive lines in football, an offensive line that really didn't miss any games last year. I think the addition of A.J. Brown was significant. Jalen Hurts, Rob, without question, was the most improved player in the NFL last year. I voted for him for that award. I voted for him. He was my runner-up pick for the MVP award. He had that type of season. He just had a breakout season, and I suspect he'll continue to play at a very high level. And I think their defense was dominant, especially when they had a lead. Their second quarter numbers last year, the scoring differential in the second quarter. The Eagles raced off the fast starts last year and just, choked you out. I mean, they didn't have to play the run much in the second half last year, and they just rushed the passer, and they led the league. They set an NFL record with sacks. And I think that's kind of their MO. I mean, that's, that's why they're so good. They've spent a lot of money on two areas of that football team, the offensive line and the defensive line. And good teams are strong down the middle. That's why I really like the Philadelphia Eagles.
Agree or disagree, Rich? They're the best team in the NFC.
I believe they are. I think they've got one of the best young quarterbacks. He did a great job protecting himself last year, protecting the football. They've got a good young supporting cast on offense. They've got some talented running backs. They've got some DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, good receivers, a really good tight end in Goddard. I like this football team. Washington is a work in progress. You look at the Giants, surprised a lot of people last year.
Yeah, snuck up a little, I think.
But they still, from a personnel standpoint, have a ways to go. Saquon Barkley, I don't know how that's going to turn out. Obviously, he's disappointed that he didn't get the long-term contract. The team that they're going to have to focus on is the Cowboys because, I think they've won 12 games in each of the last 2 years,
right.
And they've got a quarterback that hasn't played well in Dak Prescott, and I'm anxious to see what he can do this year.
Would you, Rich, if you were ranking them, you just said Eagles would go in as your favorite. Would it be the Cowboys, then the Niners, Cowboys? And who would be third after the Cowboys and the Niners for you? It's a little bit of a fall off after those two.
I think the question with the Niners is, the quarterback situation.
Purdy or Lance. Yeah,
Brock Purdy is still recovering. Trey Lance obviously is a work in progress. We don't know what to expect from him. He got hurt last year, and so when you have two quarterbacks that are recovering from injuries, and that there's some question marks. But they got a great coach there in Kyle Shanahan, a really good defense. Another team has got a good offensive line that can run the football. So, I like those are the two teams to me. I think the 49ers in the West. I think you look at the Cowboys as the other team in the East, and I'll throw out another team in the South. It's New Orleans Saints.
Yeah,
we've got a good football team, but the quarterback position has held them back. I don't think Derek Carr is an elite player at that position, Rob, although he's got elite talent and arm talent. But he's in a good situation. They're a dome team. It's a huge advantage to play down in New Orleans. The crowd noise is a big factor for visiting teams, and they've got a good defense and they can run the football. So keep an eye on the Saints in the South.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you. I think they're very interesting. Like that's an intriguing team. I think Atlanta's a little intriguing. I'm not telling you they're in the same level as these teams we're discussing, but I think they could be interesting, something to look at. Rich, listen, man, keep up the awesome work. We, love you, Bet Parks, love you, CBS. You do an awesome job at the quarterback show as well. Sirius XM, 17-year NFL quarterback. This guy was an MVP, and he's one of our own too. And we always appreciate. You might see him on the Jersey Shore, on the beach. You never know. You never know what could happen down there. But Rich, thanks for a couple minutes, man, and hit him straight on the course, please. All right, we stay in the fairway.
Rob, you're the best. You're a great teammate. I enjoy working alongside you each and every week during the season. Looking forward to it.
Rich, be good. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Talk to you soon. Take care. That is the great Rich Gannon hanging out with us for a couple of minutes. We always do appreciate him. All right, so let's hit a couple things here, guys. Mention the Eagles. We're a week away from training camp. And, I think it's tough on the fans right now with the way things are set up now. The Eagles have been, and they're not alone. I just looked up the number, and I'll give you the exact number of how many teams actually just train at their facility now, because it used to be, we all know how it used to be. You would go up to Westchester when I was a little kid, and then it was Lehigh after that. But it's crazy. 25 of the 32 teams train at their facility now, and the Eagles are one of them. And you don't really get as many opportunities to see them in preseason games because, let's face it, the starters don't even play in those settings. By the way, thanks to all of you in the chat section. Great comments. And thank you, Coach Marcus. Great convo. Very, very appreciative of someone who played the game at a very high level. But nonetheless, a lot of fun discussing that with Rich. And I'm a huge fan of Rich. But anyway, it's tougher for the fans because you don't get as many opportunities. You're at the mercy. Basically, what you see is what you get on, with the limited amount of video that you see from when the media is allowed to be in there. So it is tough. You get excited for camp, and then there's kind of that, all right, they're back, but when does the season start? We're getting close. And I think what happens now is we start to overthink things a little bit when you get this close. And we all do it. I do it. It's paralysis by analysis because you're so itching for football to start. You start looking for things that aren't going to work. This is a hell of a football team. This is a really good team. And Rich mentioned it. The offensive line, the defensive line, they're really good. Their skill position players are really good. They have a quarterback who is as dialed in as anybody playing the game and is improving at an unbelievable clip in Jalen Hurts. So you should be excited, Eagles fans. You should, because this team's going to be really good. I think they're the team to beat in the NFC. Our A2D agree to disagree question. I agree. They are the team to beat in the NFC. And there it is. Yeah, they absolutely agree 100%. Look, San Fran is loaded, except we don't know about quarterback. The most important position in sports we don't know about right now with San Francisco. If Purdy plays well, yes, then there could be a different conversation here. But right now, we don't know if he's going to be able to match the level that he played at last year, and B, how healthy that shoulder is going to be, right? And I don't think they believe in Trey Lance. I don't think they do, the team itself. Then you go to Dallas, again, talented. But don't we say that every year about Dallas? It feels like we do. And inevitably, what happens is Dak will make a critical mistake. Mike McCarthy will make a critical coaching error in game, in a big spot, late in the game, you're not having timeouts or trying to run a play that takes too long, right? We've seen all these kind of things before. I feel like with the Eagles, they have the advantage at quarterback, they have the advantage in the trenches, and they have the advantage at coach, and they have advantage at GM. So I'll take my chances with the Eagles any day of the week. All right, beyond that, got to love what the Phillies did over the weekend against the Padres. Things didn't look good in that game one of the doubleheader. They had come off the loss Friday, which was their third straight loss. They were looking kind of listless early, and then to their credit, they fight back in that game one, and it flipped everything. And they end up taking 3 out of 4 from San Diego. I think they're poised to be the number 1 wild card team. I think that's how this is going to end up. They're not going to catch Atlanta, but this is a good team. Now, the big question is 2 weeks from now, do they go heavy? Do they go big boy, Ohtani, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Soto, or do they go, to a lesser extent? I don't necessarily view the lesser move as a bad move. I want to see them get some outfield pop in the corner, and I like what's happened with Rojas coming up here, but I think they need a little outfield pop. I think Harper's going to go to first base in this series. I think the other thing they have to look at long and hard is a reliever, because you got Alvarado banged up, you got Sir Anthony banged up. I think getting a reliever in here would really help this team. So that's the direction I would go. I feel like I say the same thing to you every week regarding the Sixers. I don't like what's happening. I haven't liked what's happening from the jump, the start of this offseason. I don't feel like there is a real plan. I think there's a hope by Daryl Morey that he can convince James Harden to stick around. I think Harden's checked out. And when Harden checks out, bad things happen. So you better figure it out. And if you're not willing now to give up, to get a return of 50 cents on the dollar, you better start getting that way. So figure it out and make a move and get him out of here, and addition by subtraction. I truly believe that. Get more players that are Nick Nurse kind of guys in here. Turn the ball over to Maxey and let him and Embiid eat. Now, as far as the Embiid comments, I'd like to win a championship here or somewhere else. I think there's a couple things at play. One, I do think it was a message to his team, to Daryl Morey, like, figure out what this is going to be. I do think he truly believes that he wants to win a championship here or somewhere else. But if you think that wouldn't tick off Sixers fans, you're kidding yourself. And I don't buy the trolling thing. I think that's him trying to walk it back. It feels like they're stuck in quicksand again, and there isn't going to be any kind of advancement with this team. It's going to be the same old that we talk about every single time. So it's frustrating. But anyway, nonetheless, appreciate all you guys, man. We're going to keep this thing cranking each and every week with people that I think are interesting. I love Rich's story, and I think it fits exactly what we do here, where it's not just rocket ship. It's, sometimes you're kind of flatlining for a little while. You're even taking a step back, but you're not quitting, and you're climbing. And Rich, from St. Joe's Prep to Delaware to Minnesota to the Patriots, to Minnesota to Washington to Kansas City to the Raiders to present day, is a great example of what we're talking about here. Anyway, a lot of fun today. I want to thank Ralph Dell, doing a great job producing the program. Tom Arnone, our guy, as always, and every one of you who are hanging out with us each and every week. Tell a friend. We do appreciate it. I am Rob Ellis. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you next week as well on the Rob Ellis Show right here on A2D.